look at that jersey. You guys, it's our wine ambassador training hour on Saturday, June 4th. If you guys are looking, go ahead, Jackie, talk. I see you on there.
I am here. I am ready.
So you guys, this is the Jackie Bellavia Duhan. Did I say that right?
You absolutely did.
I call her Dallas. She calls me Utah. So I have to, sometimes I would say, here's Dallas. You guys, if I ever say here's Dallas, it's Jackie. Okay.
That would be me.
Yep. So Jackie was number 17 in the top 20 when we did our harvest event last year. I don't know where she is going to be in the top 20, but she's in the top 20 based on our preliminary numbers, which we close at the end of June. And at the moment, I can tell you that Jackie's still in the top 20. That being said, as a leader and an MSI with us and everything else, she's going to be training today. Jackie, what are we talking about today?
Well, we are going to be talking about the wine process and, more importantly, the fermentation process of the wine, because that is the most important, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about, Roy.
So I want you guys to know that she was asking for the topics and stuff to cover because she wants to make sure we're on an agenda. She knows Tanya and I very well. And I literally gave her one of the toughest topics and she didn't even hesitate. She just went and got stuff ready and did her research and everything else. And what I want to point out is that attitude is why she's kicking butt all the time. She didn't look for an excuse or a way out. She just went and did it. And I promise you, the time that she went and did it was about the same time as complaining about it. And yet she's got an awesome presentation. But these are the activities and patterns that you want to be aspiring to have. And I want to just put this out there because this is who Jackie is all the time. She lives by this pattern. So you're going to, you guys have heard this, and I'll be a broken record about this all the time. Success leaves clues, right? And if you want to be successful, you find somebody that has what you want, that's doing what you want to do, and you learn from them. You don't go learn from somebody that's not successful how to be successful. You don't learn from somebody that is, you learn from those that are doing what you want to do, not from those that say they want to do what you want to do. Or and you want to do it from people that are doing it now in the present, right? I talk about this in my book. It's a life lesson that I think everybody should learn early, not later, that you can't learn something from somebody that's not doing it. You can't. And unfortunately, the human nature of things is we like to be experts on things we know nothing about. I don't even know where that comes from. I like to know everything or nothing. And if I don't know, if I'm going to know it, I'm going to study it out. In today's world, and I'm going to get off my soapbox, okay? I know great successful people. Elon Musk will say the same thing. You can teach yourself anything by going to the library, by opening up the freaking internet. Everything's out there. You can self-teach yourself anything. All right. We have YouTube that has how-to videos. So I gave her a task that is, guys, it's not an easy task actually. And it's awesome information, but I want you guys to pay a lot of attention to it because this is knowledge that allows us to understand why fine wines and the store created wine beverages are so different. You guys hear me talk about it all the time. Now we're going to get some of the nitty gritty. All right. And then you guys, we're recording this, take notes. You're going to want to revisit this one when we post it up on the channels because it is going to be something that you can always pull to write. Now we're talking about getting Google AdSense on our PBSs and getting content done. Wine is such a big part of what we do. A lot of people, if you're not into wine yet, maybe you just started drinking wine for the first time or getting experience with it. Here's some great content that can give you several storylines from to share. All right, Jackie, you guys, and I love her voice. So guys, I'm going to mute and just listen to her because I can listen to her talk all day. All right, Jackie.
Okay, here we go. Can you see my screen, Rory?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. Okay. Well, before I get started, it was kind of funny because I'm a planner and I do like to be prepared. So before I ask the question, you never really ask a question until you think you have the answer. So I did send him a note because I already had my presentation ready for today. And about 2 minutes after I sent him the text, he gave me another topic. So to me, that was a challenge, and I love challenges. So I sat down yesterday and I put together a presentation that I hope you all will enjoy about the winemaking process. And it is a lot of information, but we'll try to go through it relatively quickly and smoothly. And I'm hoping that at some point I can have him dive in here to give just a little bit more color about some of the information that I researched. But today is Saturday, June 4th, and this is the Wine Ambassador training. And so let's get started. So the first thing that I really realized, and you hear Roy talk about it a lot, is wine is really an arduous process. It's of observation, sanitation, practices of shepherding billions of microbes, and I can't even say that word, through a process of fermentation. And guys, fermentation is the core that makes the wine. It's where you take the natural sugars and turn it into alcohol. Okay. And it is a very tedious process that I have found. But one thing that gleamed out at me as I was doing my research yesterday is that there is a huge difference in what the mass produced commercial guys do versus what we do at our boutique Discovery Winery in Napa. So, really, there are 9 major styles of the wine to make wine. Okay, you've heard of many of them. Some of them you may not have heard of. We have the sparkling wine. You have the light body white wines. You have the aromatic sweet wines, kind of like the dessert wines. You have the rosés. We have those that we offer. And then you have your light body reds, your medium body reds, and your full body reds, the cabs, you know, the real bold type taste that you have. And then you have the dessert wines. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on each type of wine. What Roy really wanted to do here today, and I hope I have accomplished that for him, is to actually talk through the importance and the tediousness of the fermentation process. So the grapes are unlike avocados and bananas. You know, if you go to the grocery and you buy your avocados and your bananas, you really need to use them relatively quickly because they get overripe. Well, grapes are not like that at all, guys. Grapes do not ripen after they are picked. So during the harvest season, which is in September, Roy just spoke about that and how we have our event, our harvest event and everything, which is kind of cool. It is really a time that the jobs are very plentiful, and it is very important how they pick the grapes. Some grapes are picked slightly ripe because they have high acidity, which you will find in your white and sparkling wines. But some grapes are picked slightly riper. So some are kind of not ripe enough, and then others are riper because of the sweet concentration towards your dessert wines, right? And there's all sorts of things that go into that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But believe it or not, the weather plays a huge, huge part in harvesting the grapes. And if that weather causes the crops to fail, it could cause the vintages to taste different. And so that's why, and one thing that I learned when I was at the winery, we had the opportunity to meet with the winemakers. It's really interesting to see how they test the grapes to see at what stage they are before they pick them. And, you know, and the weather, one of the reasons that the Napa and Sonoma Valley area is known, world renowned, is because of the weather and because of the soil there. Just know that. And then after the grapes are picked, you start the process. They get to the winery, right? They load them up on trucks and they get to the winery. The grapes are never washed. Very important, because that ruins the quality of the fruit. Now, in your mass produced wines, if you compare the two, your commercial produced wines, they wash the heck out of them and it ruins the fruit. That's why it's almost like theirs is a recipe. Ours is a natural process of how the wines are cultivated. I like this, and I have this cool little image here. But whenever that I was looking through the research and everything, how they sort the grapes and they squeeze them and they prod them really into submission, it's kind of like they're in a big vat, right? And then they just squeeze and all this stuff. And then the juice goes to the bottom, which is represented in the image here. I thought that was kind of cool. The color is LSU color, so I really love that. So Cabernet grapes are sorted, for instance, in big pallets, like conveyor belt pallets, and they remove the mog. And what the mog is materials other than the grape. So for a cab grape, they take out the stems, the leaves, all that. And that is a very, very manual process, guys. This isn't done with big machinery and stuff. This is people, individuals working these grapes to make sure that we get the best quality wines. And then for your Pinot grapes, they are fermented with the stems added. So the stems stay on for those particular grapes because it adds natural tannins. While on the other hand, thicker grapes, and you like the big purple thick grapes that you see, a monastrell grape, they destem those because they have, it helps reduce the bitterness and the tannins out of them. So I thought that was very interesting to learn. And then your white grapes are not fermented with the seeds or the skins at all. If you look at the image here, they are in big strainers, which are like vats, and they squeeze and they pull down so that you get the juices to be able to make the white wine. So there is a very distinct process for each type of grape that is cultivated. And then the cool thing is there's always something left over, and that is called the pomace. And the pomace is like what is like just the remains, if you will, after they have gone through that process. But nothing is lost, okay? The cool thing is that this substance that is left, believe it or not, it is included in some of your cosmetics and even in some of your foods that are made. So nothing goes to waste, which I really thought was very interesting. And then some white wines soak with the skins and seeds, and that's what I was demonstrating to you a while ago for a shorter time, which really adds what's called a phenolics. It's like a tannin, which is natural, which increases the richness to the white wines, okay? And by the way, that's how orange wine is made. And I thought that was a real interesting nugget there. So there's several different ways that you can actually ferment your fruit, okay? But the three most popular, which is indicated here, is the wood fermenters, the stainless steel fermenters, and then you have concrete fermenters. And each one has a part in the flavoring and the quality of how the wine is fermented. So I thought that was very interesting to share with you all today. And then this one really jumped out, and I was hoping Rory would be here. And if he comes back, I want him to kind of elaborate a little bit on this, but it jumped off the page at me when I was doing my research that, quite honestly, the most important part of the fermentation process is the yeast. And many winemakers opt to use a commercial yeast. Well, guess why? Because then they can control the outcome of that fermentation, guys. They are really taking a recipe and they are controlling that process over and over, so that when you are actually buying your store-bought wines, it kind of tastes the same from year to year to year. Whereas in our winery and what our wine makers do, we develop, or we allow the fruit to develop its own local strands of yeast and let nature take its course. Okay. We do not alter that in the process, which is very, very important, because many times, and you've heard Roy talk about this, when you have a mass produced wine or a commercial produced wine, they actually bottle that very quickly. Okay. And many times after you drink that wine, red or white or sparkling, you get what's called a wine headache. We call it the wine flu, right? But it is a wine headache. And sometimes they are very, very difficult. But in the case with a fine wine, and because we allow the natural process of the yeast. And if you ever see a grape, especially when you go to the vineyard, you will see this. The grape kind of has a white coating on it. Well, that is the yeast starting to form in its natural state. So that's what the difference is between a mass-produced wine and a fine wine. And you can even see kind of in this illustration here, of course, you could, let me go back a minute. You can see this is kind of like how they can handle the commercially used yeast versus a grape forming its own natural substances in forming the yeast itself, which was very important. And a big, huge difference in mass-produced wines versus commercially produced wines. I found this one kind of funny, but the way that they measure the juice, it's called a Brix, and it's a mathematical formula. And so 0.6 equals like 1 Brix, right? And even when we were at the winery last year, the winemaker had this little tool, and I couldn't find one because I would have put it on here, but it's a little stainless steel looking tool, and it kind of has a spout at one end of it. But as you are measuring the grape juice, if you look into that particular tool, there is actually a measurement in there, so that's how they see what Brix that juice is at, to be able to see if those grapes are ready or not. And it was pretty amazing to watch him do that, to test the grapes in the different sections of the vineyard. And basically the alcohol producing yeast, which consumes the grape sugars, turns it all into what we know as ethanol, which is alcohol, right? And then once the yeast consumes the sugar out of the fruit, it kind of poops it out. It really does. And that's how the fermentation process works. And so the grape sweetness is measured in Brix. It's very basic. Just like I said, 1 Brix results in 0.6% of alcohol per volume. So that's a really good thing to know. And then I kind of liked that little grape dancing around and eating and pooping it out, because I thought that was pretty interesting. So visuals are always better, right? So let's move on and talk about the different levels of the wine fermentation, guys. Everything is done really by degrees in Fahrenheit, right? So your red wines are fermented a bit hotter than your whites. They're usually fermented between 80 and 90 degrees, okay? Fahrenheit, which would be 27 and 32 Celsius. But Some winemakers, and this is where you have to pay attention. Some winemakers allow the fermentation to even rise higher to tweak the flavor. What's happening there is, think about your winemakers that are artists, that are cultivating the Luxors that we have versus your mass produced winemakers that are tampering with that process to make that wine come out to a certain recipe, which I thought was very interesting. Then on the other hand, to preserve the delicate floral fruits and aromas that often ferment in white wines, they're fermented at a lot cooler degrees, which is like around 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius and up. This is especially true in aromatic wines, such as Riesling or Muscat Blanc and things like that. While the wine is fermenting, basically carbon dioxide is released, which causes grape seeds and skins to rise to the surface. Well, when that happens, that's some of that stuff that we talked about, that is the leftover stuff that is in your cosmetics, in your food. You follow how that goes? So, and then there's a couple of different ways that while the wine is fermenting, you can control it, right? So there's a thing that's called punching down, and then there's a thing that's called pumping over. All right. So there's different techniques on how the juice is handled. So if you are using the punching down, the cap, that is done 3 times a day. 3 times a day. On the whenever it is the pumping over, which you see both ways illustrated here, they go to the bottom, and then they kind of work that, almost like fold that and help those skins and everything come to the top. The choice, like I say, between pump down versus pump over really depends on the type of wine and grape desire for the taste profile. All right. And you hear Rory say a lot that, they go out to the vineyard and they see all this happening, guys. And our winemakers come from generations of families that have done this. They are very experienced. So whether they are, doing the pump down or the pump over, it's usually, generally speaking, lighter wines use pump downs, bolder wines use pump overs, but as with all things wine, exceptions abound. So it's the beauty of what we have is we have experienced wine artists that actually make some phenomenal wines for us. Okay, and then when the fermentation is done, it's finished, right? It's time, you would think, okay, now, we're good to go. It's still another process, a very long process. It takes time to rack the wine out in the fermenting vessels. The juice that runs free without being pressed is generally considered the purest, the highest quality. It's called the free run of the wine. And it's kind of like, extra virgin olive oil versus just regular olive oil, right? The rest of the wine is considered press wine and is generally slightly more rustic with harsher tasting tannins, if you will. So press wine is typically blended back into the free wine. Remember, less taste is better. So there's a whole process that they go through to make sure that we get the right balance of that wine when it's delivered to us. There is a lot of labor of love going through this wine. So finally, the wine moves to what we call, or the French call, the élevage. And the élevage is a fancy way of saying the waiting area. Okay. It's got to go wait. It's got to rest, right? So that said, believe it or not, a lot happens in the winery while we wait for the wine to cure, if you will. And we want it to cure to something great. You have had Rory and Tanya both talk a lot about, we do not bottle our wines until they're ready. We will let them sit. Whereas with a mass produced wine, they are all about volume, and the bottom end is dollar, guys. They're just throwing their recipes out there on the shelves, plus they're adding artificial stuff to be able to have a life shelf. Whereas we cultivate with care and we let them sit many times 3 to 5 years for that wine to age properly before it is delivered to us. So during this time, the wines are actually racked and tested, stirred, and often blended to create. You've heard Peter sometimes say that they might take this type and blend it. And there are several fine wines out there that are a blend. And when you read the tasting notes on them, it'll tell you the different grapes that were blended to get that particular vintage. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And with that, I said I was going to do about 20 or 30 minutes. So really, the next time you look at a bottle of the wine that is delivered to your door, by all means, just realize the love, the care, the nurturing, and everything that goes in to each and every bottle, because it is very phenomenal. So I would open it up. I don't know if Stacy's here to open the chat. If you happen to have any questions, maybe we can take a few questions until Rory gets back. I really would like him to take a few minutes to elaborate on some of that fermenting process. Because I think it even goes into more detail than what I touched on in the short period of time that I had to research it.
We might miss the questions in chat, Jackie. If they want to raise their hand, then we can unmute them individually.
Could you help me with that, Niall, please?
Absolutely, we all can.
Here.
Always.
Okay, I didn't know y'all were there. I was like, where are my peeps? Where are my peeps?
Listening closely.
Well, you're screen sharing, so we hide.
That's okay.
All right, Denise, what's your question?
Stop screen sharing. We can probably see everybody better too.
Okay, through all the wine vineyards, how do you know which wine is like Cabernet, Rickard, and all that other stuff? How do you know what part of the vineyard is what kind of wine?
That is a great question, Denise. The label of the wine is chosen. The vintage is determined by the varietal of the grape. So in the case of the Rickard Merlot, that is a certain grape that was fermented as that type of wine. And I don't know, if you look at the tasting notes, it's very important because it typically will tell you the type of grape, whether it was a Cab grape, whether it was a Sauvignon Blanc grape. There's several different varietals. And if it is a blended grape, it will also tell you that. So to hopefully answer your question, Rickard, that is the label of the wine that was chosen to represent that particular grape. Is that a good way to explain that now?
Yes, that Merlot was made by that grape, and Rickard is the name on the label. And the Pinot Noir is another grape. And the reds and the whites are all, most whites are made from the whitish looking grapes. Some of them are just young, what turn out to be red grapes later, but they just are chosen at a different time. And how long and how thick the skin is decides the color too. We get some rosés out of that, right?
Yes.
And blended wines could use a Cab Sav and a Pinot Noir, or a Cab Sav and a Merlot, or a Cab Sav and something else. There's a lot of blended wines out there now that are just absolutely delicious.
And when we were at the winery, Denise, just so you know, as you were walking down the rows of the different grapes, they are labeled. They are labeled whether it is a Cab grape or it's a Pinot grape or whatever. So they're tagged. And when I was discussing that, the winemaker actually had that little tool. That's what he was showing us. And he was telling us that, well, this particular grape needs to have this much Bix before we will pull it to ferment it. And so I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Jackie. I was still eating.
That's okay, buddy.
All right, next one is Kathy Taylor. What's your question? Jackie, before Kathy, you want to stop your screen share, then we can.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, Kathy, what's your question?
Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
Great presentation. Thank you very much for the interesting information. I have a question. It's basically from my sister because she always has this question and I don't know how to answer her. I tell her that we make fine wines and we go through this long process, the natural way of making wine. But when you go to the store and you buy store-bought wine, it's usually like a, I don't know, they just make it, like you said, like by a recipe. But my question is, we live in an area where there's a few wineries around where we live, and some of these wineries sell their wine in some of the stores. But how do you know when you go to a store and you see all of this wine, how do you know that wine is like, it has been stamped out and, been like a recipe wine, or if it has actually been grown in a vineyard?
Well, I guess the best way to answer that is you have to, first of all, when you're going to a commercial liquor store, grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are those, you typically see just like bottles and bottles, whether it's and I don't want to say any names or anything, but you could have like a bunch of Merlots. They all look the same. They're all the same year. And it's just massive. I know we have the wine stores here that you just walk in and it is just massive amounts of the different types of wine, right? Mm-hmm. That's your first clue that is a mass-produced commercial wine. They have to fill the shelves, right? They have to make sure that those wines have shelf value. So what they do with those wines is they typically do just what I discussed earlier. They tweak it. There's a recipe that they use because the big wine distributors want to get as many bottles as quickly as they can to fill those shelves to make their money. Okay. Mm-hmm. Our wines, and you've heard Rory talk about this a lot, we are considered a boutique winery. All right. Mm-hmm. When we cultivate our wines and we get a vintage in, I'll use the Nile Eddy, for instance, that is a group of bottles of wine that was produced for that vintage. And when that's gone, it's gone. It will not come back for the next so many months or years until it's grown organically, just like I showed you. Whereas I'm not saying that the wineries, we have wineries all over Texas. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they're little vineyards and they have, grapes and that. And quite honestly, those are boutique wineries. And what you do, and you probably are familiar with this, is for those wines, you have to sign up today, but you aren't going to get that wine delivered to you for 2 or 3 years because that wine's not ready until then. So you could very well have little boutique wineries near you that's doing what we're doing. But are their winemakers as experienced? Do they have the knowledge to put into it exactly what I mean, that's just a personal choice, in my opinion. I don't think there's any right or wrong. Now, that wine versus a commercially produced wine, typically in your store, that is a wine punch that comes from a recipe. You add this much yeast, you add this amount of grapes, you put it in a vat for this long, and you spit it out to go sell it. Now, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you covered it well, but I was just sitting here thinking a lot of those winemakers are supplying Walmart, Sam's Club, and so many. And just think about how many shelves those are, and how and whether or not Walmart would wait for the wine experts to say, okay, we think it's ready now. They have to speed up the process.
Yeah, they'd be out of business.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question pretty good, Kathy?
Pretty good. It's just trying to tell the difference between a commercial wine. That's a very good way of putting it, I guess.
If you buying it off the store shelf, you can pretty much bet it's a recipe.
It's a commercial wine. Yes, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And they may have some local wines from some of the small boutiques, a store in Texas or a store in Louisiana or a store in Pennsylvania. And they may have some of that, but it's not sitting down there with the $9 a bottle stuff. It's sitting up there with the
$100 bottles,
$200, $500 bottle stuff.
Well, Niall, the other thing is, and Jackie, will those wine bottles in the like Total Wines or whatever, will they actually have the year it was vinted on the bottle? Is the label going to change what year it was vinted on the bottle?
Some may, some might, but you could have a 2018 bottle and a 2017 bottle, and they're going to taste the exact same because it's a recipe. Whereas if you take a Nile Eddy, the vintage that we just had, which is delicious, or the Donna Meyer or the Rickard or whatever, the next time we get those shipments with the new vintage, those wines are not going to taste like they did.
Oh, but that
Because
Donna,
of the natural process.
that Donna on that Nile is going to be so much better than that Rickard, though. You know that, right?
Absolutely, baby. Absolutely.
No, they're all so equally great. They're different grapes, different, and they're all beautiful. They're all perfect. Must have some good experts going out there to taste that and tell us when it's ready.
Really? Who's next, Stace? Or now?
About $300, $500 bottles of wine. I said, well, they don't sell that stuff around me. That must be a New York thing or a California thing. And a couple of days later, I went into a local liquor store, and then in the back of the building, I found a glass cabinet with $200, $500, and $3,000. Like, oh my goodness! It's been right here under my nose all this time.
Yeah.
Dawn is next. Go ahead, Dawn.
Okay, Jackie, I really enjoyed the information that you shared with us today. It gave me a lot of information. The question I have is, when I do wine tastings, how much of this information would you use for the wine tasting party? Because of course I don't want to bore the people that are sitting there, but I want to give them enough information so that they can see what we do.
So Dawn, I want to answer that if that's okay.
Well, hello, Utah. I needed you a while ago on one of my slides, brother. Where were you?
You know what? I apologize. I was helping Linda with something very crucial. Timing.
Okay, kick me to the curb. It's all right.
No, I heard that, like, oh, then you're on to the next one. But okay, so in regards to any information, the more you know, the better. But you don't need to just spout it out and spew it out. It's just good to have it. What's even better is to create pages with information on it, so that when someone's calling up there, it's always fun to say, hey, here's my page on that. It'll explain even more. And then now they have all this facts to go study, and they can read it on their own, and you don't need to argue or have to know even more. You just use it as an information piece to back up what we have. The thing about truth is it doesn't change. And when we have truth, and you don't even have to remember it all or like be that expert on it. You just have to have it written out. So, you know, you take this information there, put an information page together. But the thing about it is again, it's shared truth, meaning it's they can go Google and find out the same information. They're going to find out that what we say is exactly it. We're not selling anything based on bullshit. It's not like, and I'll say this: there's wine companies that I've seen out there make up stuff to make themselves sound better, and they don't need to. So then it makes you worry like what they have. And this is any business, but in wine, the way we make wine is the way we make wine. The way they make the wine beverage in the store is the way they make the wine beverage. They're all facts. You know, no brand in that store selling their bottles for $20, $30, $7.99, $5.99 make the wine the right way. That's a fact. You couldn't afford to. It's a fact. No, not one of those wines is made the right way. Not the true way. They're made in a botched way. I use a different word sometimes, but they use it, they make it in a really bad way, right? And they put additives in it. That's a fact. That's a fact. So that alone is what our difference is. That's one of the things. But not everybody understands how the fermentation process goes and what goes into it. And yeah, there's ways that they can speed it up with chemicals and processes. But it eliminates the goodness that comes from the right fermentation process. You know, you cannot speed up the process that nature already has. That's sped up as it is, and there's a huge value to that, and that's the main thing we get to share with them. And then we have the value proposition where our wines are basically the same price as that crap you're buying. Why would you even buy it? That's and focus on the benefits. That's the benefits, right? The features of how it's made and all that stuff is great to have, especially when somebody tries to call you out on it and say, oh, all wines are made the same. Oh, it's not, but here's some information to study. You can go Google and check all this stuff out. That's what's good to have it for. But when you're doing a wine tasting, keep it fun, festive, and just do the benefits, right? What's in it for them? And then everything else is going to be answered when they taste it, right? Then they're going to be like, okay, this tastes really good. And that's all you want to do. Have fun with it, Dawn. Like, okay. And I'll tell everybody this when you're doing like a wine social or a wine tasting, it's not like you bring 20 people to your house and all 20 people sign up. It's still follow-up. And I've had my best success doing those every time by making sure I follow up with them and set the expectations. So they show up and say, we're going to try this, and say, hey guys, it's a club, you can sign up anytime, but you know, I want to make sure we enjoy this tonight and everything else. I'm just going to set a time and call you back. That, you know what, it takes the pressure off of them there, and they can go through it and they'll appreciate it. And then when you follow up with them, you've already set the expectation for them to sign up. And you're just, all right, let's get those bottles going. Here's the link, and just walk them through as if. That's been my best direction on doing this every single time. When I first started doing this, I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to come here. They're going to be like me. They're going to fall in love with the wine and just want to sign up. That's how I am. Okay. Not everybody is that way. And and they might be thinking, oh, I don't know, that you don't know what's going on in their life, and you're in a social environment. So make it fun, but set the expectation up. Somebody come through, say, you know, hey, we're going to get things going. I'm going to set up some time to follow up with everybody here. If you like it, you're going to get some wine. If you don't like it, I think you're crazy, but if you like it, you're going to get the wine. I almost say stuff like that. Because I was like, you're going to taste how good these are. You're going to want these coming to your house all the time. And I'm going to call you to get the setup there. So I'm going to set an appointment with you all. And I do it before I give the wine. Right. And then I go around and like, which one do you like best? You know, what do you like about it? And just discuss it. And I try to put notes, like I do things in Trello, right? I try to put notes. They like reds more than whites. So when I call them, I say, let's just get you all in all reds. We're going to sign up right now. You're going to get 4 initial bottles. They're a mix. Let's go back to your back office and get all reds. And to say, you know, you're going to get an assortment. It's okay. Even our whites are amazing. And you might want to, you know, get a custom case, or every now and then you can switch back and forth from mix to stuff, especially if we got a hint what's coming, right? So it's just fun to do that. And it's all about follow-up. Dawn, does that help?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, you guys do not need to be experts on wine to do this. You just got to know the key benefits.
All right, next up
Carry
is
on.
Carry on. Who's next, Dave?
Jesse is.
Okay, my question is, what is the best advice you could give someone who is brand new to wine, does not drink any type of alcohol on a regular basis, and really knows nothing about it? Because I've gotten my wine shipment in. I destroyed the cork on the first bottle trying to get it open, and I tried pouring a glass, just as soon as I got it, and it kind of, I didn't do research of that. I ran into something that said you're supposed to chill it in the fridge or leave the cork out and let it breathe and chill it before you drink it. Is that standard with all wines, or?
All right, and that's why we do these calls. I'm going to bump in on this one again. Sorry, Jackie. I'll take this one too.
Okay.
So Jesse, first of all, we are definitely a discovery program. And because of prohibition, the wine culture in America got killed. 2 generations of wine drinking got destroyed. And just so you guys know, that's a big, big deal, right? When one door opens, when one door closes, another door opens. And, I'll put it this way, in general, I think it's proven by history, we're not going to stop drinking alcohol. There's just too many, benefits to it in the right reasons to keep it going. We like our booze, right? Wine is a very special, alcohol. It's got way awesome health benefits, and a lot of spirits do as well. And that's why there's some good side to it, and it's definitely in moderation. I'm going to put that out of the way. Next is when it comes to wine, we got to educate people on the proper storage of it, because it is a perishable good. And there's better instances to drink it than others, such as reds. You typically want to uncork it and decant it, or pour it in the glass and let it sit for a little bit to open up. The oxygen opens up the flavors of the wine. The tannins get to settle down a little bit. White wines, you can pretty much pour from the glass, but almost every white wine you want to chill, and you want it to be, about 58 to 70 or 58 to 62 degrees. Depending on it, and some of them can be a little bit warmer, and so typically the rule of thumb, if it's whites, put it in the fridge. Pull it out of the fridge 10 minutes before you want to drink it, so it can settle down, because it's too cold in the fridge. Most people have their whites too cold, but if you pull it out of the fridge and let it sit for 10 minutes before you open it and enjoy it, it's almost perfect every time. Easy. And then next, reds. Reds are almost always, some reds are even get cold, but I'll put it that way. I keep my reds in my fridge, and that's, when you get really snobby, Jesse, you can get wine fridges to have the wine set at the right temperature, okay? You get really snobby, there's benefits. Like, I can get the perfectly chilled wine because I have fridges that are set for the temperature, right? Whites are here, reds are here, certain reds are here, and you can control that. But if it's like a red, usually you're keeping them in a really dry, cool, or cool, dry place, usually below 70, hopefully, like downstairs or in a dark room, or you don't want to put them in sunlight. You don't want to put any wine in sunlight. Sun has a great benefit to help grow those grapes, but it kills wine when you got wine exposure through the glasses. That's why we try to keep a tinted glass and help protect that. But even whites aren't supposed to be in sunlight. But if you have whites you're going to drink that night, put it in the fridge, chill it, and then 10 minutes before you want to drink it, pull it out. Easy. Reds, pull it out from this. You want to pull reds out and set it out there. Open it, pour it in the glass at a minimum. There's decanters you can get, and there's also these little aerators that you just pour from. It opens up the oxygen. Even those aerators are a must, and they're very inexpensive. I think we were shipping them out to everybody. We constantly make them available. And that will open up the oxygenation. What you don't want to do with the red is open the bottle and think that it's getting oxygen. That little hole in the top doesn't let very much oxygen in. You want to, if you minimally pour it and let it sit. So I'll tell you, so here's a rundown of like a perfect meal for me. I'm a celebration meal, whatever. I'll sit down. I might start the night out with a cocktail. Now for Tanya, a cocktail is a glass of rosé. Me, I might be having like a dirty martini to start out the night. Or I'll have the rosé too. I've actually been growing on our rosés. That's a cocktail wine. For Tanya, that's what she starts with, okay? While we're having that, dinner's prepared, and let's say we're having steak, right? You have your salad first, and you're finishing off your rosé, okay? Or the cocktail, whatever. And then you finish off the salad. Well, while that's happened, you've got your red. And if you have time to decant it, great. If you don't have a decanter and you don't have an aerator, then you pour it out of the bottle in the glass and let it sit there for the 10, 15, 20 minutes that you're starting the meal out. Then when the steaks come off the grill, you set them down, and now you finish your cocktail wine, and you move right into the Merlot or the Cab that you're having with that steak, or that Pinot Noir, or that Malbec, or whatever it is. You enjoy that steak with that wine. And then, you know, depending how the evening's going in the conversation, you have that second glass, or, you know, you can move on to like a port wine or some other things. That's a European direction. I love that direction, but it teaches you a lot of things. And that is, you can start out with the white wine and go to red, and it's awesome. And you always want to start out with something lighter and go heavier. It's a palate thing. And most of the foods we eat, typically we've been trained, you start out with fruits and salads and then go to the heavier courses, right? And then for those of us that really like to live it up, we have that rich dessert later too. So take that as notes to enjoy it with, and it'll solve it. Just keep it that simple. And this is why we do the wine and dines on Wednesdays and talk about this stuff on a regular basis, so that everybody can learn how to do that, what to pair, what to do things. Because Jesse, the question you just brought up is one of the most basic ones that everybody has. And if we can address that easily, it makes the experience better for them sooner. And then people are going to be like, why have I been missing out my whole life? And that's the point. Okay. That help, Jesse? Otherwise, Jesse, yeah, that's a great one to start out with. Or have with the salad, or have with, you know, it goes with a lot of things. And keep setting, my friend. All right, Renee.
Hi, Los. I know you're probably going to pop in on this one, and Jacqueline probably too. Because of where I live in Alabama, I've got to go to everything has to be delivered to the ABC store.
Correct.
I have been at them every week. Brett was kind enough to send me all my tracking numbers. Nothing was coming up. I finally got the tracking number. It was delivered May. Nobody called me. I got a hold of them, and my husband went to pick it up just yesterday. Okay. What I'm worried about is the heat. It says it's being shipped ground UPS. To me, ground UPS is a cheaper way of shipping. That means it's going to be in a truck.
Okay, Renee, I'm going to answer that. Our tracking goes through UPS.
Yep.
Okay, but UPS, we use a third-party refrigerator company between UPS and Napa to the UPS in your local area.
Oh, thank you.
So, okay. So we got this down to a science. No, this is actually really good for everybody to know. This is a benefit of the club. So our wines are perishable goods. If they get too much heat, too much cold, it destroys the wine. Okay. Now I'll tell you this. It's probably our single biggest problem, and it's been very, very minor. We've had a few bottles that when they get too hot, the corks pop, ruins the wine because it's boiling in those boxes. That's why we use a refrigerated company. So just so you know, when it gets delivered to that ABC store, it goes from the refrigerated unit to the UPS for the last 2 miles of the delivery. And the ABC store, because of their way they're set up, they put it in a cool place for you. They have to. They know better. So you actually have a better situation than a lot of people because they're not leaving it on your doorstep. They're not leaving it anywhere else. It's totally in a good condition. And that's why you haven't had a problem with any of your bottles when you get them, even if it's been a month late. Now, our tracking should be in the back office. We can check on that so you can see when it's supposed to be there. ABC, Alabama. First of all, let me just cover this. We're talking about alcohol. We're talking about taxation and a money profit center for every state. Okay. The ABC store process that they put in is better than them being what they used to be, which was a dry state. Okay. So at least you're not Utah. All right. Where I live, it's horrendous. I can't even ship to myself. Right. So in Alabama, we ship it to an ABC store. Now they passed a law. I don't know when it's going to go into effect or if it's going to be all the way through where we can start shipping to your door. But the ABC store thing, it's actually a benefit to everybody in Alabama because you know it's going to be delivered and safe there as long as you know when to expect it. And they put that in as a courtesy. I think they charge you like a minor like $1 or something, right? $1, yeah. So it's like $1, and the funny thing is they charge $1 because they had to put some consideration for the state. But UPS, we pay a fee, and part of that fee goes to the delivery place with them. So we pay even more to go to Alabama because they get paid to receive it from UPS. Everybody's getting their money. That's why this all works. But I'll just put it this way: an ABC store means you don't need to make any considerations. You just go about your day, but you want to get your wine. So as long as you know when it's there to go pick it up, it's great. It's great, Renee. But everybody else understand refrigerated shipping. We do it when it's hot or cold. If it's too hot or too cold, we protect that wine. We burden that expense and keep the shipping price down for everybody as low as possible. You guys, we are shipping, and I'll just put this out there because, if you don't toot your own horn, someone else doesn't toot it, usually. But you guys know that price and gas is all up through the roof. Everybody knows they see the price raises. Have you guys seen us raise our price on the wine? We probably should have. I'm just hoping it settles out and we just ride it out. But you guys, we have some pretty strong negotiations when we did this stuff before. But the refrigerated companies and everything else, the bigger we become, and thank you everybody for growing this, the more power we have with that in the refrigerated trucks. Because we're not just sending like one box at a time. We're sending a bunch to Texas. We're sending a bunch to Alabama. We're sending a bunch to Georgia and a bunch to Florida. So the economy of scale has helped all of us. So you guys, growth in the numbers has really been helping on that. And I'll just put that out there. But Renee, the reason why your wine's not getting destroyed 99.5% of the time is because we got the processes down with refrigerated trucking. Now, we do have incidences and we have insurance for it where the UPS guy doesn't deliver it right away or makes some claim that he stopped by and maybe did or didn't. And, it's a human thing that we have to deal with. Every one of our problems has been that. We had, we had an issue with, Niall had an issue with one of the boxes where the wine was damaged because it was left out in the heat and it wasn't supposed to be. But that's an insurance claim. We'll win it. We always do. And we go forward. The thing that sucks is you don't have your wine for a bit. And that's what we're trying to hone in on. But you guys, we got this down. We're professional. And we use those services. Now, in the other countries, it's a little more difficult. In Canada, it's a little more difficult. So in Canada, and I'll put this out there, if the weather's too hot or too cold, we just keep it in a refrigerated location until we can ship it because there is no refrigerated service in Canada. Why? Because there's the same population in Canada as there is in greater LA. That's why. There's just not enough demand and supply for the company to run that. And I wish there was, but hey, we deal with it. But I promise you, you'd rather wait longer to get the wine properly than get wrong wine early or bad wine or ruined wine. It's just a mess. So that's just what we have to deal with the perishable good. What was that now?
That's why it's always good to keep 20% more than you think you're going to drink.
That's why you should always have a backup case or two. And I have a rule of thumb with anything important. I always have enough on hand in case a party breaks out, always. So for the Rickard family, that's 500 bottles. But, who's counting?
Lori, we are after the 12 o'clock. Do we want to, how many more questions do we want to?
I say we do two. Actually, let's do two more.
Okay.
And then, yeah, we need to get on to the other stuff. Yeah, so here, let's do this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and, no, whoever is just on there, we'll do 5 more. You guys just left, come back on. We're going to do 5 more. Okay. I'm going to do an audible. We're going to do a couple more questions right now because this is good. And then we're going to stop and we're going to take a break until the next top of the hour where I'm going to do that 6-hour training. So people can get some lunch. People can get ready. That's going to be a very important thing. So let's go ahead and, Kim, you're next.
Yes, sir. What I wanted, Jackie, you just kind of went quick over the wood, stainless, and concrete. Now I know about the wood and the stainless, and other people may not as far as the differences it does in the flavor. I've never heard of the concrete part of it, but can you kind of go a little bit into either Roy or Jackie, one of you, about what that does to the wine, how it affects the wine?
How what? What was that again, Kim?
One of the
What kind of vats that they're stored in after they're fermented, you know, to put in for the rest of the fermentation process, whether it's wood or stainless or concrete? You know, the barrels and stuff.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't think we put any of our wines in concrete per se, but they're in concrete walls. But pretty much everything's in one of three things: stainless, food grade plastic, because there's certain wines you do that, and then obviously the barrels, right? And it's based on the wine and what's going on in the clarification processes and everything else that follows that. So I'm going to give you just really simple things. If it's a red wine, it's pretty much in barrels. Okay, pretty much. There's a couple exceptions always. These winemakers are insane creative on some of the ways they do stuff. So they might leave the barrel and go into a vat for a different type of blend process and then back to the barrel.
Like those bourbon, whatever barrel things.
So that bourbon direction is like somebody like trying to have fun with the commodity to it. And that either goes really good or bad. There's no in between. And so like we'll test it from time to time. I actually like it when it's done right, but I actually have tasted 9 out of 10 are horrible.
Yeah.
And maybe more. So that being said, that's good. But like white wines usually go into glass or the more and more of the food grade plastic. They've got that down to be the same. The thing with the thing with glass is it allows a purification on the filter process. Glass can just be cleaned without sanitization. But they have these new machines that with that food grade plastic container, they're big. They're just lighter than glass, so it's actually kind of safer. Like I can tell you a situation where a big glass vat, something just hit it just right and it shattered, and $10,000+ later, that was awful, right? So there's some things that I just no one even knows what even happened, right? But the food grade plastic has taken that over. But it's the same thing as like glass, and then there's stainless. Stainless is really good for like your Sauv Blancs, your Chardonnays. There's a certain time where they don't want anything else affecting it. Stainless doesn't let the sunlight in, and it also is a lot easier to temperature control in stainless. So it's based on the wine process itself and what they're making, but not everything's going to be in barrels all the time, because like our blends, like I'll talk about like the AVP, for instance. The AVP was in barrels a lot, but it was in vats when they were doing the blends to get things together. And they do a blend process. It might take 30, 60, 90 days, and then they test it, change it, and then they do a filtration. They do all these things in between, and it's going from that to barrels. Also, barrels, when they say it's been aged 3 years in barrels, that doesn't mean it was in the same barrels for 3 years. There is sediment and stuff that grows. They take it out. They have a process to clean out and filter it, right? Your wine, you don't want to see floaties in your wine unless it's really old and they had time for the sediment to form. That's a good thing. But on a new wine, you don't want to see that. So they go through a process where it gets cleaned from barrel to barrel to barrel, and it might have been in 3 barrels a year at a time, or 1 barrel for 2 years, another barrel for a year, and then a finishing barrel for 6 months. Depends on the wine, the winemaker, and the love it gets. It's awesome to know that, because it's not like they just set it and forget it. I mean, they're working on them all the time. And depending on when we go out there, we see them loving and caring and, pulling the samples. And blending is such an art. It's not like, and it changes year to year. This is something I learned probably the last 4 years when we were doing this process. Is you look at it like our Chenin Blanc blend that we use for the Parables in white. That blend, and then the blend that we use, same grapes, right? Same blends, but different percentages year to year, because sometimes the Viognier or the Chenin Blanc, they're stronger tastes in year to year. They blend them differently. So it's not the same recipe year to year with us. It's based on the grapes every year. And that winemaker, he's got to taste it in the process and say, oh, I got to change the blend up. It's not the same year to year. It's never been the same year to year. It's always been different. And that's something that's really, and that happens in that process. That's why they put them in those vats and move them around. But you guys, it is so not simple. And I can tell you, as a, you know, I brewed my own wine for years, and I made my own beer, right? It's a similar process. It is so much work. That's why these guys, it's best when we have these full-time guys doing it. That, I mean, this is their passion. And if anybody wanted to try to make their own wine, odds are they're not going to enjoy it. And if they want to get good at it, they're going to have to do it over and over and over and over again. And that's the thing, right? And that's why these big commercial conglomerates, they speed the process up like a recipe, because they don't want to spend the money, time, and love that it takes to make true wine. And when you understand what is in it, it's just important. But it's good to know that stuff. Anyway, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, answering the same thing. But don't it's up to the winemaker what he does. But typically, if it's red, it's in a barrel. If it's white, it's been in stainless or food grade plastic, and a big vat. And then they have these belly things that sit in the back of a truck. It's a bladder. It's obviously food grade. It's like a big plastic bladder, like think of a waterbed. The old waterbeds, they had the one big bladder. It's like that. That's actually the best example. And they put the wine in there for transport, and they also sometimes let it sediment and sit in there in a process. And there's certain things. So that process does other things to help make the wine ferment differently. And I know of certain winemakers that purposely put things in there and travel them through different temperatures because it does things to the grape. Now, you guys know champagne, sparkling champagne, right? It was created on accident. It got created by being on a ship and rocking back and forth, and it created the bubbles and the things in the fermentation process going through temperature, and then they figured out how to do it in the science. There's changes to that, right? That same technology, science, and everything with nature is why Napa and that Sonoma area, that valley of the world that God created, is so good for wine, because it's got the frosts, the heat, the constant rain, the air from the ocean coming through that create the elements to make the wine. Nature is intended to make the wine better. So when any company wants to speed it up and avoid that, they are missing the very elements that make wine. That's my point, and I'm glad I got to get that out there. All right, Gloria.
Hi, Rory.
Hi, Gloria.
I just wanted to, I have a question, and I wanted to say, I'm sorry it took me so long because I got COVID right after I talked to you last, but I got that Moscato, and I tell you what, it was amazing. We went through both bottles in just a few hours. Everybody loved it.
You know what? I put a bunch aside, and so I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna tell you guys this. Wait for an announcement, because I'm probably gonna open up some more to be available for custom cases only.
Okay, that was one of my questions, and the other is: are we gonna have more wines like that on the sweeter side? The people have been asking me.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. So you guys got to kind of bear with Tanya and Peter's palates, right? A little bit, because we get to do it. We're going to do it. When Tanya and I put all the money up to make this thing work better, my prerequisite is I wanted wines that I loved. So the worst case, I had great wines to drink, right? The thing is, the sweeter wines people like. I've in this process for myself, I am not a sweet wine guy by definition of who I am. That being said, the right Moscato and the right Rosé has turned my head and my palate. So the answer is you're going to have those. And I know that you guys like them. So I'm going to tell you the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, there is a new Tanya Rosé coming out that you're going to enjoy completely. It's not that super sweet, but it's succulent sweet, and you're going to really, really, really like it. It carries a 2-letter acronym I like to give wines like that. I promise you're going to love it. The next one is the Moscato. The one that's coming out next year, it's going to be totally a different taste, but it'll be on the sweeter side. Moscatos typically have that orange blossom taste, a hint of it, This one just has a lot more orange to it. It's very unique, but it's sweet, but in the right area. And so that's why it's really good. So I'll be releasing the rest of that out there. I was getting a little selfish and held some, but it's not a lot. So it won't be like enough to put in the shipments probably at all, but we'll put it in the back office. We sold out of what we had really quick. So what was I going to say? Oh, go ahead, Gloria. You had another thing, right? Or is that it? The sweet wines. There's a new wine coming out in a couple months that has an amazing body to it. It's a red, and I think you'll like that too, Gloria.
Okay, we got two more, guys. Sheila.
All right, Sheila.
You got to unmute, Sheila.
Okay, thanks. Okay, first of all, I want to say thanks, Rory and all the crew, for all your hard work and all the great wine. Now, I want to know, do you have any suggestions of places that I can do like wine tasting? Because the ones I have at my home haven't been successful. So I need some ideal of businesses.
Okay, Sheila, let's go over that. And Jackie, you're welcome to add to this too. It doesn't matter where you do it, at your home or another business. The ones at homes are just as successful as I've done the ones at big restaurants. And I've done big deals where it was like a $25, $50, $75 tasting where they were basically getting the food. I didn't charge them for the wine. We can't. Anyway, put that out there. You can't charge for wine. But I gave them the wine, right, and the tasting. But they paid for the meal and showed up, and we did a pairing. It was actually a lot of fun, and we got a really good sign-up rate out of it. But that was like, but you know the way you want to market it. But when you have them come to your home, Sheila, just understand they're not going to just come in and sign up. You got to follow up with them. So and I have friends that sign up right away because they drink wine, they spend the money on wine. And then I have friends that don't realize how much wine they drink. They think they just do it occasionally. And you got to make them aware of what this is and then follow up. There's always follow up in it. So I would tell everybody, don't go crazy with a location yet. Start out in your home. Start out in your friends' homes. The one of the best ways to do it is like this. Remember, we have that refer 3 and it's free. Even refer 1 and get free wine every 3 months, right? You do it at your friend's house, right? And tell your friend, hey, you invite some friends over, we're gonna invite them over. Anybody that comes over there, if they sign up because of the event, we're gonna put them in your group. You get 3, your wine's free, right? Just use that to go forward. And I want to tell you, this is like a home party with wine when you do it like this. And the thing about home parties is they're very successful for the right type of products. And wine is just a social product. And I'm gonna throw this out because it's worked. Does anybody know Pampered Chef people?
I was one.
Or Tupperware, right? If you're doing Pampered Chef, like my sister does Pampered Chef, but we did a Pampered Chef wine party. They're there, and if you double dip like that, they go there, they get into more of a buying mood because they're around things. The thing with wine, let's talk about it. Wine's part of everyday life. It's part of all sorts of events, but it doesn't have to be standalone. It can be a complementary thing too. So sometimes you know somebody that's already doing the party thing. You can just tag along, Sheila. I'm just putting ideas out there. Those are going to be more fruitful than trying to change a venue. The venue is not the issue. It's just understanding you're going to be doing follow-ups, and you're going to be dripping on people. And that's why we have the system like the Grapevine system, which, by the way, I'm going to put this out there. After Waikiki, you guys are going to love that Grapevine system so much more. And you're going to understand how it, like the Grapevine 3.0 is going to be released. It's actually technically already out, but we're going to be training on it and deploying more stuff. It's killer. It's killer. So that'll help out too. So Sheila, you have them come. If they don't sign up, you throw them in the Grapevine, and then you follow up with them. You guys, I have friends that don't sign up in wine right away, and a year, 2 years later, they get in. All the time. Jackie, I know you do too. Mm-hmm. But they wouldn't have signed up if I didn't do that initial party and got them aware of the wine. Right.
And also the advertising too, after you have the party, and then you kind of constantly putting something on Facebook, or I'm going to the vineyard, or I got this, or I got that. And those wine unboxings, let me tell you what, they watch those too.
Yeah. And I have somebody goes, okay, Rory, I'm ready to get my wine now. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's been like 2 freaking years. But that's how it works. Ascension marketing is real, guys. It's real. It's got to be right for them, and it's got to make sense for them. And they see us being happy all the time. They say, oh my gosh, this business is really real for Rory. Now, my friends knew I was into wine already. And when I came out with the label, right, when we launched everything and the Rickard label came out, I had a ton of people go, oh my gosh, you're taking this seriously. I'm thinking, I always take everything seriously, but yeah. And they're like, I want to try some of it. Just sign up. Right. And it comes on there. I get new people all the time from the posts you put out there. So just do what we teach you to do, Sheila. It helps. And if you think about it, most of us don't just go buy things right away. We got to be sold on it, right? We got to sell ourselves on it. That's the Ascension marketing. That's why we teach you to do all the social media, put the memes out there, show all the stuff, show the party you have, show the fun you're having on it, and let people want to become part of it, right? That's what we do. It's just a slow, patient process. That's your expectation. And those are like me that are action-based. Like, I'm the best guy because I know what my time's worth. I like something, I want to try it. I also have a different mentality than most, right? People with affluence make better decisions because we already know the price of time. That looks great, I'm going to get it. We also have more money. So money is not the issue. We understand how to create more energy. We're going to say energy, right? And if it's going to make my life better, I have energy for it, because the more energy I put into myself, the more energy I get out, the more energy I put out, the more I get back. It's all good. Not everybody's in that mode. So you just got to just drip on them and drip on them and drip on them. And this is why I say all roads lead to wine, because the patient process of wine represents the patient process of life and everything in it. Okay, Renee. Are you done, Renee, or do you have something else?
Am I on or off?
You're on.
Okay, great. I have a question for you. Please close that door. Cognac, fine cognac.
Yep.
From the bottom of the barrel. Is it from a whiskey or from a grape?
Cognac. So cognac is more of a whiskey,
okay,
than a wine. Okay. But it's definitely a distilled product, right? So distilling and fermentation are 2 different ways that alcohol is made. So, but you get that, and it's kind of like cognac is just its own special spirit. So, and for me, it better be really good cognac, because there's great cognac and then there's crap, right? So yeah, and I haven't had a good cognac for a bit. I'm trying to think where I have a bottle here somewhere now that you say it, but it's not a wine-based product, but it's got similarities, and the tasting, the flavonoids might come across because of how it's made, but it's more of a whiskey. But it's not whiskey; it's cognac. And everybody in France is appreciative that I specified that out for them.
Well, I think that is going to be our last question of today. And I certainly want to thank all of you for joining us for our time together. I hope you learned a little bit and had a little bit of fun along the way. And Rory, I think we can take it away.
Awesome. Sounds good, everyone. See you guys next Wednesday. Those that are staying on for the next training, we got a 36-minute window before we start. Get some food, shake the legs out. And then we're gonna get busy on some things that's gonna change a lot of people's energy levels.